This week's video is another gig diary. In these videos I'm trying to give you a kind of flavour of what it's like to be a professional musician working in the UK, along with some top nerdy tips along the way. So firstly, here's a little preview of what you could expect coming up this week. Firstly, here's how you sound check a room mic. Here's how you record a guide vocal. This is what happens when a gamble pays off and you let someone from the audience sing. Me admitting that I can't do something.
I bet you can.
I can't. Finally, a bit of footage from the audience's point of view. Now, before we get to the gig footage, I want to show you something else that I did this week. I've got a new album coming out in June, July this year of all original material, and it's pretty much all recorded. I spent about the last year with Mike Drinkwater, the keyboard player, sending stuff backwards and forwards. We also recorded Ralph's live drums, and Mike's done these amazing backing vocal arrangements. The last thing we need to do was also add Ralph's backing vocals on. We've been trying to get together and do this for ages, and we finally managed it this week. So I recorded a little bit of this. Now I'm also hoping in a video coming up in the near future I'm going to be able to go over some of the recording process that I've been through with Mike. We've got absolutely mountains of stuff to go through, and Mike is absolutely brilliant at this sort of stuff, so watch this space for a video on that. Now hopefully you've already seen Mike and Ralph in my videos. Now if you haven't, I'm going to put a link to one here. This is us playing live, so go and check that one out. But first I found this clip from about 10 years ago from a different band that I do with Ralph. We still do. It's called Not the Hoople. It's a covers band. It's a good fun band we do. We recorded a demo with Not the Hoople. In the video you'll see Chris, the keyboard player. Now what Ralph was supposed to be doing on this video was just laying down a nice simple guide vocal so we could then all record our parts afterwards. However, as you will see, he in his inimitable fashion started doing some lyrical amendments as we went along. Now the clip's 10 years old, but it still makes me laugh, so I thought I'd share this with you first.
How it feels. You gotta roll with the punches to get what's real. Oh, can't you see me standing here? I got my back against a record machine. I keep my testicles clean. Can't you see what I mean? I might as well jump. Go ahead, jump. Go ahead, jump. Go ahead, jump. Jump! Is that alright?
It's a wrap. That still makes me laugh, even 10 years later. And he hasn't changed, it turns out, because I set the camera up for the session, and then it wasn't until I was watching the footage afterwards I saw what he was doing behind me. Let me show you this. Right. Ready for the second?
The second chorus?
Yeah. And I thought I'd just do a little montage of a little bit more of the session that we filmed, just to show you the kind of process we went through, working out what notes to sing on the piano. And the results were very good, and there's a little bit of that at the end of the clips as well.
What it was I meant to... No, that's shit, that's shit. That's absolutely shit.
So,
yeah, I think keep it. What it was I meant to do. So I want the...
I think that...
Mine in my own shoes.
Because there's so many... No, I think for this bit...
So take the...
Yeah, because the chorus, the verse is intentionally kind of got the...
Oh yes.
Make go more
yeah,
you know, not having the dominant 7 in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Very nice.
Feeling like a drum.
So which note do you
My
think?
time never comes.
Because it's an E minor.
Oh yeah, okay. Right.
A bit Michael McDonald on the last one.
Da, 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 da. No vibrato.
For the-
Da, 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 da. Da, ba, da, 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 ba, da, da.
That's really good.
Excellent.
That's hard to do that. I can't do that.
I bet you can.
I can't.
So, on to the gigs. Now, this first one was something that doesn't happen very often. It was a band that I hadn't played with at all. I've never worked with them before. It was a kind of showcase where you invite clients along to who might be looking at booking the band. I'd sent all my details to the band and I turned up, and I had actually met the bass player before. I haven't done a gig with him, but he's also a very fine pedal steel player. His name's Francois, and he taught me some pedal steel stuff about 10 years ago. I had a few lessons off him when I first got my pedal steel. I think I've worked once or twice with the sax player and the keyboard player, but other than that I hadn't met anybody in the band. So this was the first song. This is High Ground by Stevie Wonder, and just after the second verse I get thrown a solo. So here we go, first song I've ever played with the band, and I have to do a solo straight away. Now this second clip is another Stevie Wonder song, and here is a lesson learnt for me, because I sent my repertoire off to the band to say what I knew how to sing, not play. I mean, they send me the stuff that they were playing, but they asked me to sing some tunes, and I sent off a list that I had, but I didn't look properly through it. Now over the years I've removed stuff from my list and I've added stuff, and on this list there was a song that I haven't sung for a long time on there, which I'd forgotten to delete, which was Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder. Now, I don't know why I removed the song originally, probably because I'd just decided it wasn't for me. So when I got sent the set list and this was on here, out of all the songs that I sent, 3 were chosen, and of course this was one of them. But of course it's a good number because there was a full brass section, so I thought, well, I better just do it anyway. I think it came out all right. Here's the clip, see what you think. On to the next gig. Now, if you've seen any of my other gig diaries, you'll recognise this venue. It's a regular one I do. It's called The Farm, and it's in Eastbourne, which is in East Sussex in the UK, right on the south coast. I've done this gig quite a lot this year. This was a solo gig. Sometimes I do it with a singer called Christabel, but this was a solo one. And what was remarkable, for me anyway, about this gig was it was the first time I've used literally just my Quad Cortex, my guitar plugged into the Quad Cortex, straight out of the Quad Cortex into the PA. It's the first time I've done that. What I'm going to do first is show you the large amount of pedals that the Quad Cortex has replaced and made my setup much, much easier. So let me just show you my pedal board that I used to use. This is the acoustic pedal board that my Quad Cortex has effectively replaced. Now, it's a steel, was it steel? Some kind of metal. It's quite a heavy thing, and also you can probably just see under there I've got a T-Rex power supply, which in itself is quite heavy and probably a quarter of the size of the Quad Cortex. I also used to have a really big preamp on here for my Takamine, which I used because it ran the valve preamp in the Takamine, which I've got rid of, but I can't directly compare that to the Quad Cortex because the Quad Cortex can't power my valve preamp, so that's not on there anyway. So my previous signal chain was into the Fishman, and that effectively did what the IR does on my preset that I've created on the Quad Cortex. I mean, this does sound really good, and it's got some EQ on it, and a compressor, which of course I can put on the Quad Cortex. It's got an anti-feedback thing, which I don't have, I don't think, or I certainly haven't used on the Quad Cortex, so that's interesting. Hadn't thought of that until I just said it. And it has a tuner on, but I've got a tuner on the Quad Cortex as well. So, yep, that's pretty much covered apart from the anti-feedback thing. Then I'd go into this, the G7 equalizer, which I just use for some clean boost for solos and stuff, which I've just put a gain block onto the Quad Cortex. Then into the Octava to do my bass lines, which again I've got the Octava on the Quad Cortex. And I think then I go into the delay, and again I can do that on the Quad Cortex. This is a nice delay, there's lots of stuff on it, but I can probably do all of that on the Quad Cortex, but I only use it very simply. And then into the looper, which is of course the new thing on the Quad Cortex, which now enables me to use it just on its own. But one thing I have got here is I've got this one as well, which I bought a long time ago when I used to use this looper, which this one does work again now. I've finally got it repaired. The switches go because you tend to stamp on them, so I replaced it with that. But both of them from time to time have failed, so that's why I bought this second one, which I put in line. So if this one hangs or locks up like it does sometimes, I could just use that one in a song. And this one, to cure the problem, you just have to pull the power out and push it back in again, which is fine in between songs, but not in the middle of a song. So there we are. That's what I used to use, but this doesn't have reverb on it, which is quite a big thing, because I really like having the reverb built into the Quad Cortex. Also, it doesn't have, you know, all the other effects that I can use if I fancy it, like a wah-wah and things like that, and volume pedal, which I can use the expression pedal. But in actual fact, on the last gig I didn't even bother using the expression pedal, because as you can see in this setup I don't really need it. So let's, where have I put my Quad Cortex? Let's just compare. So that, well, let's do it like this, then we can see more directly. Much easier. Now, before I get onto the clips, I also have a top tip that I've discovered on the Quad Cortex. I've seen several people saying they're not sure how to set up a volume pedal using an expression pedal on the Quad Cortex. Now, I've been doing it for a while. I use the gain block, but there is another way of doing it. I discovered this second one, I'm ashamed to say it really, but this second method I discovered for using a volume pedal, don't tell anyone, but I read the manual. I know, it's bit embarrassing, but you do have to do it sometimes, and occasionally you do discover things. I know it goes against everything reading the manual, but anyway, so here we go. I'm going to show you this, a little bit of close up on the Quad Cortex, show you these couple of ways that you can set up a volume pedal. So to use the expression pedal as a volume pedal, to set it up as a volume pedal, the way I have been doing it, and this is the preset that I use on the video that we're going to see a little bit later on the Elton John gig, where I can plug the acoustic guitar into input 2, the electric guitar into input 1. You've got two separate paths, but they both come out on the same output, which allows me to have my mix on the same fader on my app for my in-ear monitors. So I have a gain block set up on the electric guitar path with the expression pedal assigned to it, and I use it as a volume pedal. I kind of ride the volume pedal because I need driven sounds for rhythm and lead. And also when I switch to the acoustic guitar, I can just kick it back to the heel and it mutes the electric guitar. But this is how I have it set up. When you've got the heel down, it puts the levels off. When you push it all the way forward, then it's set to 0 dB, so you don't get any gain on it. It's just literally acting as a volume pedal. And you do that by going into the assign the expression pedal. You assign level, and what you do, you have to set the minimum range to 0 and you set your maximum range to 50%. If it's 100%, you get extra gain, but if you set it to 50%, then it goes to 0 as your maximum output. Now the second method, which I controversially discovered by reading the manual, I'm ashamed to say, on these multi-outs, I knew you could click on it and you could change the output that you wanted. So for example, on this preset I could send the acoustic guitar out on one output, the electric on another, which wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted them on the same output. But when I read the manual, I discovered you can do this. You press and hold and you get all these different options. You get the option to mute and solo the output that you've got selected. You can pan the output, but more importantly, you can assign an expression pedal. And this is the way you do it, similar to the other way. assign it, and I discovered that you need to set the maximum range to 77% to make it equal 0. Let me show you. So now, heel down, off, right forward, 0, and that's 77%. So there we are. That's a top little tip there. I mean, that obviously affects the volume at the output stage of this, so it's after the amps, etc. So if you wanted to use a volume pedal to adjust your kind of gain staging before your amp or effects, then this isn't the place to put it. But if you want it as a kind of last in the chain overall master volume, then this is a really good place to put it, and you don't need another block. So there we are. I hope that's handy. I think it is. Haven't used it yet, but I can see that's going to be useful. So onto the footage of the gig. Now this first clip I've done a few clips of me playing this song, but I thought this time it came out particularly well, and I was very pleased. I kind of fiddled about with the EQ to make it sound right with where I was sitting. I added a bit more bottom end because it was lower volume. Quite often on a band gig or something, acoustic guitar, you really need to roll the bottom end off the acoustic guitar, because for one, it interferes with all the frequencies. It'll interfere with the piano, all those kind of middle frequencies, and the vocal. So you'll just want those top strummy frequencies. But when you're playing on your own, you need the full range, you need the bottom end. So I put a lot of the bottom end back in, and the IR. Now I have got a video already where you can see how I set these presets up. I'll link to that here. So there's nothing in this clip technically remarkable, apart from it. I was just using the Quad Cortex and nothing else, but I thought it came out quite well, so I'm going to show you this clip anyway.
All the good girls here on a broken heart.
Then something else happened on the gig which was unusual. I had someone come up and say, can my daughter come and sing with you? Now I wouldn't normally, unless it's my own daughter, get people up to sing, because it's always a bit of a risk, because they might be absolutely dreadful. But I kind of got the vibe that it was going to be alright. So I said, yeah, why not, come and sing. And she wanted to sing Jolene by Dolly Parton, which of course is a tricky song to sing. And she got up and sung, and it would be an understatement to say it was good. It was extremely good, and luckily I got a bit of it on camera. I didn't catch her on camera because I just had the camera pointing at me and I was sat down and she was stood up, so unfortunately I didn't get her in the video. But her name was Jemima, and she was very good indeed. Yeah, have a listen to this.
Jolene, 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 I'm begging of you, please don't take my man. Jolene, 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 Jolene,
final gig of the week was another Elton John show. Now, I've documented a few of these gigs over the last 6 months or so. These are the only gigs I just used the Quad Cortex with no amp and in-ear monitoring, because they're all theatre gigs. It's been a bit of a learning curve, and on the last gig diary I did, I was moaning about how I felt so isolated. Didn't really feel part of the whole vibe of the band and the audience. And several people suggested, well, I had a few good suggestions, but the easiest one to implement, which I had time to implement, was to have a room mic. So we've got a mic that allows us to put in our ears what's going on in the room, the audience, and just a sort of ambient sound. So we set that up, and I got a bit of a footage of us setting up. The first one is Tom, the bass player, setting the mic up itself, and the next one is, well, this answered a question that I really hadn't thought about. How do you sound check an ambient room mic? Well, I'm going to show you how to do it. Well, I'm not totally convinced this is the kind of textbook method for doing it, but it worked, so check this out. How to sound check a room mic. That's the exact level we're going to be playing at later. That was Simon there with his new way of testing a ambient room mic. And it really did help. Well, I don't know, it was partly that and partly that I was closer to the drums. My in-ear monitors, they've also got filters in, which allows me to hear some of the ambient sound as well. But we were all much closer together, which I think really helped. And I had a great sound in my ears on this occasion. So all of those things combined, I had a much better gig, and I got some footage from the point of view of the audience. Most of the other footage I've had from the side of the stage or clips on my mic stand, but this time I asked the sound man if he could put the camera up by his mixing desk. And I'm very pleased with the way the Quad Cortex sounds. It's the first time I've heard it from the audience's point of view, and it's good. I'm very pleased with it, and if it sounds all right to me and I'm getting the right vibe, I'm going to be happy. I've definitely made progress. So I'm going to leave you with these clips. There's a solo I did on the song, the Bitch Is Back, I can't even know what it's called, and then there's 3 solos on the next song, which is a bit greedy, but I didn't ask for them. It's Pinball Wizard. So I'm going to leave you with these clips. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit like, leave me a comment, which is always helpful, and hit subscribe, hit the bell, then you'll know when I've got another video coming out. I'm bringing out new videos every week, sometimes more than one a week if I get a chance. So I'll see you next time.